The sky did not darken slowly, it split. Water fell in sheets no one had seen before, and the only vessel built to survive it was already sealed from the inside. The rest of the world had no warning. This is the story of that vessel, the man who built it, and the covenant that came after the flood. The world had become something its maker could no longer bear. Violence filled the earth. Corruption had spread so far that the line between the human and the monstrous had blurred. In the ancient account preserved in the book of Genesis, the decision was final, a reckoning was coming. But one man found favor. His name was Noah. He was called righteous in his generation, a man who walked with the divine when almost no one else did. To him was given an impossible task: build a ship, not for the sea as anyone knew it, for a flood that would cover the whole earth. What happened next would test everything he had. The same region that gave us Genesis also produced other flood stories. The Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh and the Atrahasis epic describe a great flood, a chosen survivor, in a boat. Scholars treat these as part of a shared cultural memory. Genesis gives the story a specific name, a specific covenant, and a promise that would outlast empires. The dimensions were precise: 300 cubits long, 50 wide, 30 high. A cubit was the length from a man's elbow to his fingertips, roughly 18 inches. So the ark stretched about 450 feet, longer than many ancient ships, built for stability, not speed. It had 3 decks, a single door in the side, and a window above. No rudder, no sail. It was not meant to be steered. It was meant to float and to keep everything inside it alive. Scholars note that the proportions match what shipbuilders would later use for vessels that could ride out heavy seas. At the time, no one had built anything like it. The word used for the vessel in Hebrew suggests a box or chest as much as a ship. It was built to endure, not to sail. Its only job was to rise with the water and not sink. Noah did not negotiate. He built for decades. Tradition and later texts suggest the work went on. Neighbors would have seen the frame rise, beams of gopher wood, coated inside and out with pitch. They would have heard the hammering, seen the scale of it, and had no category for what it was. A boat that size, in the middle of the land, with no water in sight. The text does not say they mocked him. It does not say they helped. It only says he was given the task and he completed it. The day would come when that door would close. Until then, the ark was only a promise and a warning no one else could read. Every beam, every seam had to hold. There would be no repair once the water came. The pitch kept the hull tight. The proportions kept it stable. Everything was built for one moment, the day the rain did not stop. Then came the animals. The account describes a gathering that defies ordinary experience. 2 of every kind of creature that breathe. Some traditions specify 7 pairs of certain animals for sacrifice and food. They came to Noah. They entered the ark. The text does not linger on how. It states the fact they came and they went in. The hold filled, the decks filled. Every species that would inherit the new world was under one roof. After them, Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives, 8 people. The only humans who would survive what came next. Then the door was shut, not by Noah, by the one who had commanded the building of the ark. There was no last-minute change of mind, no second chance for those outside. From that moment on, the fate of every living thing on earth depended on the integrity of the hull and the silence of the deep. What followed would rewrite the world. The flood did not start as a drizzle. The fountains of the great deep broke open. The windows of the heavens opened. Rain fell on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. The waters rose. They lifted the ark. They covered the hills. They climbed above the highest mountains. Every creature that moved on the land and breathed air perished. The ark alone rode the waves, carrying the last of the world that had been. Inside, there was only the creak of wood, the sound of rain on the roof, and the weight of knowing that everything beyond the hull was gone. But that was not the end of the trial. The 40 days passed. The rain stopped. The ark was still moving. The waters had not yet peaked. For 150 days in total, the flood held the earth. No land was visible. No shore. Only water and sky, and the vessel that carried the future of every species. The Genesis account does not describe what it was like to live through those months. It only records the fact: the water prevailed, and the ark floated. Every day inside was a day the rest of the world was already gone. What came after would depend on a single mountain. The waters stayed high for 150 days. Then they began to recede. The ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. For months it sat there, grounded, while the water slowly withdrew. Noah waited. The text gives a timeline. The tops of the mountains became visible. Then more time passed. He sent out a raven. It flew back and forth until the earth was dry. He sent a dove. It found no place to rest and returned. He sent it again. It came back with a fresh olive leaf. The third time, it did not return. The earth was ready. The command came. Go out of the ark. Bring every living thing with you. So Noah, his family, and the animals left the vessel that had saved them and stepped onto a world that had been washed clean. They had been in the ark for over a year. The world they stepped into was empty of human voices except their own. No cities, no roads, only mud, rock, and the first green. What they did next would seal a promise for all time. The first act on dry ground was worship. Then came the promise that would echo for every generation after. Noah built an altar. He offered sacrifices from the animals that had been set aside for that purpose. The account says the smell of the offering was received, and the decision was made, never again. Never again would all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood. The covenant was not only with Noah, it was with every living creature that had been in the ark and with all future generations. The sign of that promise was set in the sky, a bow, a rainbow. Whenever the clouds gathered and the bow appeared, it would serve as a reminder the flood had happened once. It would not happen again. The covenant was unconditional. It was not dependent on human behavior. It was a decision made once, for all time. Historians and theologians have long noted the weight of that moment. The world had been judged. It had also been spared. The same power that had closed the door had opened it again and bound itself by a word. The story, though, had one more turn. The narrative does not end with the rainbow. Noah planted a vineyard. He drank wine and lay uncovered in his tent. One of his sons saw him and told his brothers. The two others walked in backward and covered their father without looking. When Noah woke, he spoke a blessing over the two who had honored him and a curse over the one who had not. The family line would continue. The world would be repopulated from those three sons and their wives. But the first act on the new earth was a reminder. The human heart had not been remade. Only the world had been washed. The choice to walk in righteousness or in corruption remained. The text does not hide the flaw. It records it. The man who had survived the flood was still human. If this journey into the flood and the covenant stayed with you, like the video and subscribe for more stories that go deep into the texts and traditions that shape the world. The ark was never found. Expeditions have searched the high slopes of Ararat and other peaks. Claims of timbers and formations have been made. None have been verified by the wider scholarly community. The story does not depend on the recovery of the vessel. It lives in the text, in the memory of traditions across the ancient Near East flood narratives in Mesopotamia that share themes of judgment, a boat, and survival. What Genesis does is anchor that memory to a name, a family, and a promise. A man who built when he was told to build, a door that closed, a bow in the clouds. A covenant that no flood would ever again destroy all flesh. The weight of the story is in the silence after the rain, a world emptied. A single boat ate people and every kind of animal. And then a new beginning, bound by a word, never again. That promise was not only for Noah. It was for every generation that would look up at the sky, see the bow, and remember. The account does not romanticize the survivors. It does not claim they were perfect. It records the blessing and the curse, the vineyard and the shame, and leaves the reader with a sober truth. The flood had washed the earth, but it had not washed the human condition. If you want more narratives that unpack these ancient accounts with care, like the video and subscribe for more. Noah lived 350 years after the flood. He died having seen the world repopulated, the vineyard planted, and the covenant sealed in the sky. The ark was left behind on the mountain, in the story, in the imagination of everyone who has ever wondered what it would have been like to hear the first drops hit the roof, to feel the deck tilt as the waters rose, and to know that everything that was not inside was already lost. The flood was the end of one world. The covenant was the beginning of another, and the bow in the clouds remains in the account, the sign that the line between judgment and mercy was drawn, and that the promise still holds. The narrative does not answer every question. It does not say how long the building took, or what the world looked like the day the door closed. It states what was built, who entered, how long the waters rose and fell, and what was sworn when the altar smoke rose into the sky. A man, a boat, a flood, a covenant. The roar of the great deep has finally fallen silent, leaving behind a world washed clean and a sky heavy with an expectant stillness. As Noah steps onto the damp, renewed earth of Ararat, he carries more than just his family. He carries the fragile, sacred future of all life within his hands. Look up. High above the receding waters, a vibrant ribbon of color breaks through the retreating clouds. This is the bow in the sky, the holy seal of a covenant between the Creator and every living creature on the earth. The flood may have reshaped the mountains, but this promise remains unshakable. The storm has passed and the rain has ended, but the mercy, that is a bridge that will endure for all generations to come.